Good evening, folks. It's Freddie Vasquez. This is Faith Tonight. Let's take a look at the migrant crisis here in the United States and the impact to our cities.
You're watching Basement Politics with my guy, Freddie Vasquez.
Good evening, folks. I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered. I'm going to talk about the migrant crisis here in the United States. Good evening, folks. Happy Saturday. Hope you're doing well. I was surprised to see some of this snow. But anyway, I want to talk about the migrant crisis here in the United States. It's getting out of hand. It's getting really bad. I mean, that's all that you see on the news now. You see the impacts that it's having on cities all across the United States. Obviously here in New York City, Chicago, Oakland. It's getting bad. Many people are getting upset about what's happening here, the amount of money that's being spent, the resources that are being allocated towards this crisis, right? So the migrants. But before that, I want to get into this real quick. I want to show, this was sent by someone, and I want to clarify things, right? A viewer, supporter of Basement Politics, did a FOIL request. This was in reference to phone calls that were made to the city council president's office. Apparently, she had received anonymous phone calls from an individual who was making racist remarks. She stated this publicly. And so a viewer and someone who follows politics closely here in Yonkers submitted a FOIL request to get information on those phone calls in regards to the person who called using the N-word, "You work for me," N-word. And the response she got was pretty much that they have no record of it. This is from the police department here. And then this is from the city clerk's office, Mike Ramadelli, stating again that they have no information. However, I'm being told that there is an investigation and it's being handled by the intelligence unit. And so there were calls that were actually made. That's very true. And so I'm putting that information out there because when I made this post, I did get some feedback from individuals within City Hall. So that wouldn't put that out there. So apparently their calls are very real. Someone called making racist remarks, and the intelligence unit is handling it. And they're going to be seeking updates on it very shortly. So if there's more information, I'll give an update. But it's important that people are doing this stuff, right? That are, making sure that there is transparency and holding people accountable, even if it's true, right? There were calls that were made, there was an individual making racist remarks. Cool. We want to know, this stuff. We want to, see it, the evidence, similar to, other situations that have happened, like with the racist remarks or the remarks by the girls' basketball team over at Roosevelt. Show us where they did something wrong, because many of us feel like the coach shouldn't have been fired, and maybe there wasn't anything wrong said there, right? So if we're wrong, cool, but at least we see it, it's there, the information, they're being transparent and nothing's being hidden. That makes us a little more comfortable. But anyway, going back to the migrants here, could you believe Mayor Adams wanted to house migrants coming that are already here in the in New York City in a luxury building? New York City mayor reversed plans to house migrants in a luxury building, a building that was advertised with amenities such as a swimming pool. The building has been empty for 10 years after the developer defaulted on the loan. So for 10 years, it sat empty, and they didn't think maybe we can house American families who are homeless, other homeless Americans, homeless vets. Just leave it empty for 10 years, and now we have a wave of migrants coming to the United States who are in need of housing. So let's provide them with luxury living. an apartment building with amenities, like the ones you're seeing built here in Yonkers, right? But after many residents complained about it and opposed it, the mayor reversed his decision on housing the migrants there. They were going to turn it into a luxury shelter for the migrants with amenities such as a swimming pool, probably a gym as well. It's unbelievable. I can't even fathom this, right? So what's going on here with the migrant crisis? As of December 2023, more than 150,000 migrants had already arrived in New York City. Back in December 2023, Mayor Mike Adams, was labeling it a humanitarian crisis and said it would cost New York City more than $12 billion over the next 3 years to deal with the surge of migrants that have been bused to New York City. Many of the migrants have come from Venezuela. And we've been hearing a lot about the Venezuelan migrants, right? You know, not to give Venezuelans a bad name. We don't want to generalize and stereotypes, but we have been seeing many Venezuelans in the news, for various things, right? But many of them have come from Venezuela. An estimated 7 million migrants have left Venezuela, a country with only 29 million people. So 7 million out of the 29 left to head, I would assume, all to come to the United States. That's a lot. While many have come from Venezuela, they are also coming from places like Africa, the Middle East, and China. China has seen, or we have seen a lot of Chinese migrants pouring into the southern border. It's sparking national security concerns. I mean, we, have this thing with China, right? Economic war, cyber war going on with China, political beefs, right? Economic beef, the biggest thing, China. And here we are, seeing a wave of Chinese migrants coming into the country, Chinese wealthy businessmen, and even the Chinese government through shell companies purchasing property, businesses here, land here in the United States. That poses a security threat, right? So 20,000 Chinese nationals have illegally crossed since the new fiscal year began. And more than 90% of them have crossed into the San Diego sector. So 90% have made it to San Diego. That's a lot. According to the BBC, more than 6.3 million migrants have entered the U.S. illegally since 2021. 6.3 million. Out of that 6.3 million, more than 2.4 have been allowed into the United States to await decisions by the U.S. migrant immigration court. So they're out into the country somewhere awaiting for a decision, or even awaiting to see a judge. They're not even maybe to the decision part. They're still waiting to have their case heard in immigration court. A system that is overwhelmed. Many of migrants are getting court dates in the year 2025 and 2029 because there's so many people that they have to see. And how much is it costing the U.S.? Well, recently, a bipartisan bill earmarking roughly $7 billion for immigration and customs enforcement was stopped due to Republican oppositions. This was going to go to Border Patrol, $7 billion. And that's just what's going to Border Patrol, right? What about the billions of dollars that cities are going to be receiving over the next 5 years in order to provide housing and other resources for the migrants that have entered their cities? What impacts is that having on the individual communities, right? And so I don't believe I should be getting money. In fact, the Texas governor and other governors, in some of the southern and Midwestern states have deployed National Guard troops to the borders. They believe that the U.S. Border Patrol is not doing a good job. We've seen many videos of Border Patrols cutting the wired fence to allow migrants in. But that's confusing to me because I thought they were there to stop them, not let them in, not bust them in. They've actually been busing in migrants as well and just releasing them out into the United States. That's crazy. So the Texas governor, as well as other governors, have banded together and say, we're going to send our national troops, our National Guard, and they've been replacing the barbed wire fencing that's been cut by the Border Patrol and putting new fencing in there in order to attempt to stop the influx. It's crazy. So why are so many coming into the United States, and who is encouraging them to come here? I mean, we have our own set of problems, and things are only going to get worse, right? Unless they're being promised something that we don't know about. I mean, they're coming here, and we've seen videos of them getting into fights with shelter workers because they're complaining about the food that's being provided to them for free. In one video, a shelter worker gets so frustrated with them complaining about the food that he literally takes the tray of food and dumps it in the garbage, sparking a big fight between migrants and the shelter workers. So who's encouraging them? Right? Many migrants have shown debit cards and pamphlets with instructions to help guide them on their journey every step of the way. Many have on clean clothes, carrying cell phones as they board buses at various points of their journey. There has to be some kind of infrastructure that has been set up along with funding, as well as organization that has been discussed long before the migrant crisis began. This has to be some kind of, setup. This can't just be random people from various countries all over the world deciding, hey, we're all going to go to the United States all at the same time. Right, we're going to board these buses, that they're going to have waiting for us. We're going to have debit cards that they're going to give us along the way. They're going to provide food and water and even tents to keep us, from the sun along different stops and different points along this journey. So who's orchestrated this, right? Who's funded this? Who's encouraging them to come? Because many are saying that they're coming because they're being told that they're going to be provided with housing, they're going to be provided with clothing and other resources. So they're coming to the United States. So again, who's encouraging them? Who's doing this? Americans who oppose the migrants are not limited to or primarily made up of racist white Republicans, like we like to generalize, right? But this crisis appears to be a concern for all Americans, right? Of all walks of life, all colors, races, and party affiliations, right? Americans all over are getting pissed off, doesn't matter the color at all. Democrats in cities like Chicago, Oakland, San Francisco, New York City are holding rallies and protests, upset about the resources and the funding that's being spent on the migrants, money that's being allocated from their city budgets to the migrant needs. And they're saying, well, where was this money at when we needed our schools to be improved, or we needed our roads to be improved, or we needed, housing for our own homeless Americans, right? Where were those resources at for us? You told us there was no money, and now you're coming up with millions and billions of dollars for migrants, people who are not from this country. And it's impacting individual cities. Everyone's feeling it. Everybody. Communities are upset. They're upset because schools are literally closing in order to house migrants. So kids are being sent home to do remote studies in order to house migrants, right? Is it the end of America? That's what it feels like. It feels like someone's trying to destroy this country, right? If your goal is to improve the lives of Americans as an elected official, right? If your goal is to improve the lives of Americans by improving the conditions here in America, then allowing millions of migrants to be bussed into U.S. cities with no real plan or ability to sustain their most basic needs without creating an economic disaster, this is absolutely not the way to go about it, right? That's not what you do. You don't allow millions of individuals to come into the country, various cities throughout the country that are already suffering from, lack of jobs, lack of funding, poor school districts, poor infrastructures, housing costs that are rising, and then say we're going to go ahead and come up with bills that are going to spend billions of taxpayers' dollars that don't even really exist, because all they're doing is creating it out of thin air, right? That's not going to help this country. That's going to make this country worse. The conditions of the country, the quality of life, the economic stability of this country, it's just a bad idea. Why would anyone want to do this if you're trying to make this country great and not again, right? You just can't be printing more money. You can't print more money than put it into the hands of migrants, right? Of individuals who have not been properly vetted, but are here in the United States, right? All it's going to do is create a dependent class. They have no real financial literacy. They don't speak the language. What job options do they really have? And if they're coming here being given all this stuff, what's going to motivate them to want to go out there and actually work for it? And I'm not generalizing and say all are just going to be lazy. It's not what I'm saying. But a large population, a large segment of the migrants will get accustomed to that. Hell, they're offering them luxury buildings with swimming pools. They're giving them debit cards with $3,000 on it a month. They're going to provide other resources for them. So why would they want to then do anything else outside of that? That in itself is a huge upgrade from where they were living before and how they were living before, right? So for them, being in this apartment, getting my $3,000 a month, getting my free childcare, and other free resources is a hell of a lot better than where I came from and how I was living before. My government wasn't doing that for me. So that's an improvement. They're fine. They're going to be good, right? Just pumping more money into the economy, specifically, again, for migrants, will create more inflation, especially in the housing market, as demand will increase, not just for public housing, but for affordable housing, right? And that will impact a large segment of the U.S. population who are in need of affordable housing. And this is why many Latinos and Blacks are opposing the migrants, are speaking out, are protesting, because they are already having trouble seeking affordable housing. And here the migrants are creating a huge demand for housing, making it even more difficult. And if the government is willing to fund their housing, what do you think that's going to do for the cost of living? It's going to drive up the rents. They know, the landlords know the money's coming from the government. There's a huge demand. And if they want to get an apartment, it's whoever's going to pay the more money, right? That's who gets the apartment, right? So I'm wondering, is that why so many residential buildings are being bought by huge investors? Is that why so many developments are being made? Did all these wealthy developers and rich real estate moguls and, these institutional investment entities like BlackRock, right? Did they know that all these migrants would be coming here and there was going to be a need for housing? And that's why they started this massive development boom all across the country to provide the housing for them to be ready. They knew that the government would eventually have to do something about it. We can't just leave all these migrants out in the street. So they started to build, because it's not like Americans are doing so much better economically that they are the ones driving the need for more luxury developments, right? Because they're building all these buildings and these luxury developments as if Americans are just doing so good, and so many are coming out of poverty that they are in need of more expensive luxury developments and luxury apartments. That's not really happening. So who's fueling this demand for all these developments? So, and the fact that Mayor Eric Adams was looking to make a luxury development into a migrant shelter, quote unquote, to me suggests that that could be very possible, that people knew this, right? It's insider information, insider trading. So think about it, right? The cost of housing is going up, yet Americans' economic statuses are not. They're remaining flatline. In fact, many Americans are actually becoming more poor. It's getting financially harder for people here in America. More people are struggling as opposed to doing better. So what is driving the demand for luxury developments? And then we have the crime, right? The crime has gotten so much out of hand that in NYC, they had to initiate a shelter curfew. NYC expands migrant shelter curfew following violent incidents. And if you don't know, this boy here being arrested was located here in Yonkers. This is a 15-year-old migrant who was attempting to rob tourists in Times Square. Police caught onto him. They tried to arrest him. And instead of just saying, "I'm caught," You got to arrest me. He decided to shoot at the police. He got away and made his way on the train up here to Yonkers, where he was staying on Saratoga. And that's where he was arrested. And then there was the incident where the migrants jumped the NYPD officers. There was about 7 of them that beat on 2 NYPD officers. And instead of being put in jail and being kept there, they were released right away without posting any bail. It was bail reform. And one of them, or a couple of them, went on to commit more crimes, sending the message that you can beat on police officers and get away with it, especially if you're a migrant. Because people in New York, Americans wouldn't dare to do that, right? Brutally violent Venezuelan Tren de Grua gang is using migrant wave to launch NYC phone robbery sprees. We're seeing the moped group pulling up on mopeds. We've heard of a couple incidents in Tibbet Brook Park here in Yonkers, where people were robbed by individuals on a moped who then took off. So we're seeing this crime wave of moped robberies. So, again, something has to be done. Supporting illegal immigration means opposing black workers. And so then you're going to have this whole migrants versus blacks, migrants versus Latinos, migrants versus Americans. You have this whole great divide now. And it's gotten physical. I've seen videos of Americans getting physicals with the migrants. And again, it's not the white racist Republican. No, it's black, Latinos, Americans fed up also, because it's their communities being mostly impacted, right? We don't see them being housed in Scarsdale or, places like that, Larchmont or Eastchester. No, they're put into communities where it's largely already, a population of black and Hispanics, usually living at or below the poverty line, or whatever's left of middle class Americans, like in Staten Island, who were upset. A group of residents there were upset over the fact that migrants were placed in a school right in their community. And so from the time they were placed there till probably now, they're still there. They have been day and night rallying, making loud noise, shining lights into the shelter in protest of what has happened in their community. So as people of all colors, Americans are banding together under one issue here.
City Council appointed an illegal immigrant to the Board of Election. And this position will determine if migrants will be able to vote. And in case you're wondering, everything is going exactly according to plan.
Everything's going exactly according to plan. And I would imagine she means by whoever is creating this, whoever is facilitating this mass migrant wave, this migrant crisis, saying illegal individuals or whatever she's saying, and, that may offend people, that may, make certain individuals here in America who are already American citizens, upset because they take that personal. They may have come very recently from another country and, became U.S. citizens, or, they may be only one generation removed from, being in this country or whatever, or not whatever, their family. So they may take that, personal, and I get it, and it's offensive, and we should at least speak on this without being offensive to anyone, because this is not about, disliking Venezuelans or disliking Chinese or whoever it is that's coming here to the United States through not doing it through the proper channels. It's about the impact that is having on the country, the impact that is having on Americans of all races, right? Latinos, blacks, white, doesn't matter. There's an impact that it's having, a negative one, and people are feeling it and they're upset. And it just doesn't make sense to do it this way. It's a big disruption. And we see many cities are going down the toilet as a result. People are just hanging out all over the place. Stores are closing down because they don't want migrants hanging out in front of their buildings or their businesses. Their businesses are being robbed. So they're moving out of, locations. People are losing jobs as a result. right? Schools are being shut down to house migrants. I mean, you have to understand the impact that it's having and why people would be upset. So this is not personal or about a racial hate or, dislike for a certain group of people, but this is about, our community and our love for our community and the way that it once was, and it's no longer. I'm Freddie Vasquez, Basement Politics Unfiltered. Folks, appreciate the support. If you have any information and you want me to, report on it, you can reach me at politicwithfred@gmail.com. That's politicwithfred@gmail.com. And look, I came here. Well, I was born here. I didn't come here. I was born here. But my father and my mother were born in Puerto Rico, although technically if you're born in Puerto Rico, you're still American citizen. But, they came here when with their parents. They were very young. My grandparents didn't speak any English. As a kid, I would go places with them to translate for them, right? And I would see how they were treated at times because they were Puerto Ricans. They were not educated. They didn't have money and they didn't speak the language. So I understand it very well. But I also understand the impacts that this mass migration is having on our communities. And times have changed. This isn't when, people were coming from Ellis Island when there was this boom happening, and they needed people to work and people were, doing well as they were coming here. They started to really build lives. This is going to end up in a situation where it's just a huge dependent class of people that may perpetuate this cycle of poverty, right? Rather than kind of build, something, because again, there's no economic boom happening here in America. There's no need for all these individuals, well, except for the developers that are building the luxury developments and want the cheap labor, which is why a lot of the work is crappy. And many people are complaining about that. So anyway, folks, I'm Freddie Vasquez. Have a beautiful rest of the weekend. Be good. If you didn't watch the episode last night with Anthony DiMaggio, check it out. It's getting a lot of views already, about 500 views. We discussed the Tasha Diaz incident, but not just the threats that she made, but we spoke on the recording of the threats and discussed the legalities involved with the recording. Did Corazon Pineda Isaac commit a crime when she recorded what Tasha Diaz was saying that day? Or was it, legal for her to do? Right? We talked about the case study of a case that happened that involved that penal code 250, the eavesdropping and recording with mechanical devices and stuff. So we discussed that and talked about a few other things. So check it out if you missed that. Anyway, folks, Freddie Vasquez, have a beautiful rest of the weekend. I'm out of here. Tired. Take care, folks.
You're watching Basement Politics with my dad, Freddie Vasquez.
I don't think you were.
You're watching Basement Politics with my dad, Freddie Vasquez.
I was raised in housing. I don't think you were.
Thank you, folks. Tasha Diaz. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're not taking the fact that you're no longer the majority leader too bad. But, I'm wondering what's really going on there. Are we just being distracted from other things by discussing this whole Tasha Diaz thing? Just wondering, Tasha, why did you allow to, or was it even allowed to get this far? That's just something I thought I wanted to share, right? Why wasn't it nipped in the bud? Why did it get to this point where it was all over the news and she had to lose her majority leader title and this whole drama ensued, right? We have to pay attention also to what's going on in the meetings as far as, zoning changes and stuff. There's a meeting happening. Anthony Moranti posted it on his page. I shared it as well in regards to 900 North Broadway and the zoning changes that they are trying to get approved there so they can build another building there, another development in that area that's near Untermeyer Park, St. John's Hospital. Very beautiful, quiet area for now, but they want to disturb the peace. And that's going to cause more traffic on the North Broadway corridor going north to Executive Boulevard to get on the Sawmill. It's already a bit hectic now, right? So all the different corridors out of the city are extremely congested, and adding more buildings along the corridors there, they're gonna get more congested, right? So if you are someone who lives like along D Haven Drive, North Broadway there, and you are opposing this zoning change, you want to stop this building from being put there, make sure that you attend that meeting. I'm sorry I don't have the information, but you can check on my page. You can go to Anthony Moranti's page, district council member for District 6. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Have a great night. Tasha, take care. Take care, man. Let's have a good night. All right, be good. Yeah.